Hi guys, Ronnie here. This weekend I finally had the opportunity to ride my brand new set of Enve 7.8 carbon tinctures, and this is actually a moment that I have been looking for a very long time, because you may have remembered that previously, or for this current season, I was planning to use zip wheel sets, but at the end of April I have basically sold them out as part of my stock. So I ordered Enve wheels because they promised to ship faster than the zips, for which I would have to wait 8 weeks. Now it's October. It's November actually, and this is the first time that I was able to ride my 7.8. So that's a huge negative down there. I have waited a little over 5 months for the 4.5s and over 6 months for the 7.8s. So yeah, that doesn't look very promising, but was it worth the wait? Now, in case of the 4.5s, they are excellent wheels, but I have to say the Zip 454s are quite on par with them. And even though the brake surface is much better, the weight is lower, there's not a huge difference. You can't really go wrong with any of those. But is it the case with the deeper sections? Now, section this deep or a wheel this deep is not very commonly used, and that's for a couple of main reasons. The first one is, of course, stability. So in the olden days, or well, not actually that old, a couple of years ago, a wheel set this deep was basically unrideable by a light rider like me in anything but very calm conditions. Secondly, there's the weight concern. Of course, most people think or would rather not trade aerodynamics for weight on most courses, even though they're just slightly rolling. So that's one of the issues, and the general usability of these wheels as such. So if you want a deep section wheel, nowadays you have to keep in mind one more thing, that the mid-depth kind of wheels around 45, 50, 55 millimeters deep, they are very fast, and I think those are the ones that most of the design effort goes into, because that's what everyone uses most of the time. So that's another hurdle to overcome. And have Enve succeeded with this goal, or this ambition of designing a usable, stable and fast wheel set? Now, for the speed itself, I haven't been able to properly test these wheels back to back comparing to the 4.5s, but according to Bike Radar's tests, these are the fastest deep section wheels on the market. So there's a very good chance that they are a fair chunk faster than the 4.5s. As with the weight, I haven't measured them bare. What I've done is I have measured the two wheel sets. Well, basically it's an apples to apples comparison, because I measured the complete setup like I have here, so the Schwalbe Pro ones setup tubeless, and the other ones, since they're not tubeless, I have used Vittoria Corsas with latex tube for those, and the difference is actually very small, coming in at something over 170 grams. So that's really not too much of an issue. Now this bike, as you can see it with the Garmin and everything, weighs 7.45 kilos, so I think that's excellent. I think most people don't have climbing bikes that are much lighter than those, so I don't think the weight could really be an issue. In terms of feel and acceleration, of course, the handling, thanks to the larger rotating mass, there is some, you can notice that. and the acceleration not quite as sharp as 4.5s, of course, but I think it's not really a problem at all, and they're still very good. In fact, the way they shape these stars, so the 25mm Schwalbe Pro ones, the stars are very good themselves, and they fit very sleek to the rim. So I think that goes a long way in reducing the drag, and also gives very predictable handling. Now for the stability, both days that I've been riding had very blustery conditions, lots of crosswinds, around 20 to 30 km per hour, sometimes even 40 km per hour gusts. So most people would say that I was crazy riding these outside. But actually, and I have to stress this one out because if you've been watching my channel, I have tested a lot of high-end gear lately, and I owned and tried a lot of things, so I can say that I'm not very easily impressed by now. But these wheels, they genuinely impressed me with basically how little wind steer there was. So even this is a road bike, sharp handling, race geometry, and despite that, even in today's conditions, it was just not an issue at all. It was very surprising, even in very open areas or at the ends of descents where you suddenly get out to a very open area where otherwise you would have the crosswind immediately. Steering your bike, well, it just wasn't there. I was so extremely confident that I couldn't have told what wheels I was riding if I didn't have a look first. So they're astonishingly stable, and I think that's probably the most important aspect of a wheel like this, because the very low weight comparatively in this category, but is important. But really, a wheel is only fast if you have it on your bike and you are using it. And if it's not stable, you just can't do that very often. But I think this is genuinely a very pleasant surprise. They are super stable, and not stable for deep wheels, they're stable, period. So I'm very happy about that. And I think from now on, I'll run most of my races on this wheel set, because they're not very hilly usually, and they can give me an advantage over the 4.5s. Now for the other features, the brake track is the same as on the 4.5s, so very well modulated braking in the wet or in the dry, and then the build is basically identical as well. So you get the Enve carbon hubs equipped with ceramic sweet bearings, so very nice high-end stuff. And you also get the special Enve black brake pads, which I'm using now, and they work well. But I think, in my experience, if I use the somewhat softer gray zip pads, they have a bit more bite and a bit more brake force in them. But the downside is that they wear very quickly on this serrated brake track. One other comment I would have is regarding the tubeless setup. Well, to be honest, that wasn't easy at all. So I really expected that to be much more simple and easy, because I have had previous experience with the zips, which are tubeless now, and really it's a hassle to set up, and it took me a while to get them properly seated, to get them hold the pressure well. But now I have, and they deflate very slowly, so I would say much less than the latex tubes that I use on my standard clincher setup. Yeah, I have also balanced the wheels out with a set of Silca speed balance, balancing weights, and that's just a little marginal gain that I like to do on my wheels. And the deeper the wheel is, the more vibration you can get rid of. So to summarize, were these wheels worth the wait? Well, let me put it this way. I'm seriously considering running all my races, or most of my races, on this wheel, even though I wasn't expecting it to. If you are a triathlete and you only have a triathlon bike, or you ride that most of the time, then I think this is the shallowest wheel you are going to need, because it has a decent weight, it has almost astonishingly stable handling, it has good braking, and it has good build quality, and it has a good warranty as well, 5 years, crash replacement, anything you want. So yeah, it's probably the number one, or not probably, it's actually the number one deep wheel set to have. I have had 808 NSWs before these. They were heavier, the braking wasn't as good, and the stability wasn't nearly as good. So, and according to Bike Radar's tests, they were slower, quite a bit slower as well. They are also a bit less expensive, but if you really want a wheel that you can use a lot, then this is definitely a good investment. Now, you might say, okay, you can get wheels that are half of this price. Yes, but again, I will say it again. If you have a wheel that you can't use, it's no good. If you have to use 2 or 3 wheel sets to get in the same ballpark of all-around performance as, I would say, with the 4.5s plus the 7.8s, it's not really cheaper, is it? So yeah, I think after all this waiting, it really was worth the wait. One other comment comes into my mind now, and that's an issue with the brake rub. I've had some comments on the previous video with the 4.5s regarding brake rub and these hubs. And my take on that is, at first my 4.5s were rubbing excessively, like I had a completely loose wheel. It was ridiculous, and I was extremely pissed. And then as the time went on, I kept riding them, and it just got better. And to this date, I can say, even when I'm sprinting, there's no brake rub at all. So how does that happen? Now, most people think that a wheel rubs the brakes because it's not stiff enough, but actually I think it's quite the opposite. If you build a wheel fresh and it's completely tangent, and it's quite stiff laterally, and what it does is, even if you create some distortion sideways at the contact patch, a stiff wheel will transfer that on the opposite side directly to the brake, so the whole rim just bends together because it's so stiff. But as my wheel lost a bit of tension, it just set in, then stiffness wasn't so excessive, and that means that it can actually absorb that deflection at the bottom, and it won't transfer it to the top of the wheel as you're riding along. And again, the Bike Radar test kind of confirms this theory. So this one still it doesn't have as much rub now as the 4.5s had when they were new, but there still is quite a lot of rub. And I'm actually betting that in a couple 100 kilometers it's going to go away the same way that it did. And one final thing right now that I'm looking at the brakes, as you can see, my brakes are flicked open on both sides, and that's because these wheels are, or the rims are quite a lot wider at the brake track than the 4.5s. Now actually I thought this is going to be a problem because the modern brakes are a bit of a pain to adjust, but well, actually it's quite a lucky situation because I have this set up perfectly for the 4.5s front and rear, and if I open up the brake, it happens that it moves apart just enough to be perfectly set up for the 7.8, so that's a really nice coincidence right there. Okay, so these are my first impressions of the Enve 7.8s. I'm hoping to do an aero test soon, if the weather will allow it, perhaps, or there's a chance that it will only happen sometime in the spring, but we'll see. I try to go into as much detail as possible here, but if you have any questions still, then don't forget to leave them in the comment section down below. And if you'd like to see more about different wheel sets that I've tried or different bike setups, then don't forget to tune into my channel and subscribe. It's all for today. Thanks for watching and see you next time.